Okay, everybody, welcome. Tonight we have Christina McDowell from Cache Valley Forest School, and I'm really excited. This is one of my first interviews where it's a forest school like hers, and so I'm excited to learn about the specifics of that, and especially here in Utah where weather is different. Most of the places I've talked to, it's California, Southern California, it's warm and things like that. So I think there's gonna be a lot of cool things that I'm excited to learn how you guys are handling all that stuff. Anyway, so Christina, kind of the first question here, tell me your origin story, yours, your programs. Let's kick off there.
Okay, yeah, thanks. So our program is actually a very new program. We actually just started just this past school year, so less than 6 months ago.
Wow.
The response has been incredible. We've packed our classes, we've got huge wait lists, we're expanding. So the response has been amazing. As far as kind of my background, I think kind of one of the things that kind of sets me apart, a lot of times when I listen to podcasts or I hear other forest educators talk about their backgrounds, they often have backgrounds in the outdoors, as you would expect, or they're like background in biology or ecology or environmental science or something along those lines. And I'm actually an immigrant to the United States from Europe. So I came over here as a child with my family, and we were very much city people. And so I grew up going to ballets and to the theaters, not necessarily in the outdoors.
Right.
But I always had like such a longing for the outdoors. I think it's just kind of that like innate, kind of just that, it kind of just called me. I don't know how else to put that, but just that longing to be outdoors. And so I even remember as a child, I asked my dad if he would take me camping. And he was like, "Why would you want to do that?" I was like, "I don't know. I'm living in Utah. Let's go camping." So he took me on a camp trip, and I think it was supposed to be a 3-day camp trip. And after the first night, he said we were going home because he couldn't understand why anybody would to sleep on the ground. But I grew up, just this longing of wanting to be outdoors and not really having the skills or even the mentors around me to really like to build that in me.
Yeah.
And so, now as an adult, and I have my own children, and I got very blessed because I married a man who is very outdoorsy, and so I've kind of had my wish come true of being able to go and embrace the outdoors. But really, a big part of me creating this was wanting to create a place that everybody could come to. We know that, some kids naturally love the outdoors and they're going to be drawn to this, but I also want to like reach out to those children who maybe don't have those opportunities like I didn't.
Yeah.
That can really come and have those opportunities that are a little bit more wild and a little bit more natural, versus maybe it's not their family culture.
Right. So what are you doing to make it available, to a wider, well, to those students that maybe wouldn't have it or wouldn't have those
Yeah.
opportunities?
So we primarily work with homeschooled families. And I think the nice thing about homeschool families is even if they aren't outdoorsy, they tend to want their kids to have a lot of different experiences.
Yeah.
And so, and of course, I live in Cache Valley, Utah, so we do have a very outdoor community in on the whole. But I think just making it readily available. We try to choose locations that are not too far out of town. We're trying, kind of that balance of like we're trying to find the forest, but we don't want to make it so hard to get to that it's impossible. And I think just the fact that parents can go and drop their children off and have somebody else mentoring them. I've got other mentors working with me that are just like fantastic in the outdoors. So we have these quality mentors that are able to kind of take their kids and do these things. I have moms say to me all the time, "We're so glad you do this because we don't want to." So I'm like, "Well, we love it." So
Yeah.
so
Okay, so you just started, which that's amazing. And the fact that you said you already have a wait list, that has got to feel so validating and so good.
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. I literally had no idea. So I am a professional educator, professionally.
Yeah.
And I have like my older children that are like adults now, and then I have my little straggler, my little 2-year-old. And so when she was born, I knew that I wanted to create something. And I was like, hey, I love project-based education. I love place-based education. But what else can I create for my daughter? And that's where I was like, okay, the missing component is that nature component, that just that holistic environment that I wanted her to have. And so I thought, okay, this is what I want to create for my daughter. Is anybody going to be interested? Like,
Sure.
I have no idea. Like, I'm just going to throw it out there and say, hey, would you guys be interested? And just the response was just unbelievable. Like, I literally was like floored at how many people wanted this for their kids. And I'm trying to like balance that providing without starting too big, because I also want to make sure we have a solid foundation as we get
Yeah.
going.
Where did you teach and how long ago was that?
So I taught at a charter school,
Okay.
and I specifically taught in a project-based way, um, which is which is something I still try to incorporate
Yeah.
into the forest school as well.
What is that? You mentioned project-based, place-based. What is that?
Yeah, so one of the key components with project-based education, and also place-based education, is there's typically like a driving question to what you're trying to learn, and the content that you're learning is done in a manner that is it's very authentic. So the students are learning in a way that you would actually learn, or sorry, would how you'd actually work if you were in that profession per
Sure.
se. So like an example is like a scientist, you're not going to give them a worksheet, right, with a fill in the blank worksheet. Like that's
Yeah.
not how scientists work. But scientists create experiments. Um, and also you're not going to give a scientist say, here's your instructions for your experiment, right? Because then we already know, like, the
Yeah.
whole idea is that they're creating it. So in like project-based learning and in place-based learning, the students are actually kind of creating the experiment as well as conducting the experiment. And so it very much mimics like what a real profession would look like, whether it's science or a completely different field. It really can be used in all different types of ways.
How would you with math, for example, how would you do project-based learning with teaching math?
I'm not a math teacher, so that's a little bit trickier for me to answer.
Okay.
I know it can be done. I have a friend who's an incredible math teacher who would probably answer that far better than me.
Sure.
But I know a lot of that is just creating, like think about when do we use math in our real life,
Yeah.
and kind of creating projects that go along with, whether it's architecture or I don't know, whatever else it might be.
Yeah. Oh, I'm
Projects that would
picturing like
align with
trying
it.
to live a story problem. Like that's kind of what it feels like.
Right, yeah.
Okay. And then is place-based learning, are those kind of interchangeable or is that something separate?
So they are separate, but they are often used together. So place-based learning, it's really learning in a place.
Okay.
So it's like it doesn't necessarily have to be outdoors. I mean, forest learning is place-based because you're learning in the forest, right? But you could go to an art museum, or you could go to a history museum, or you could even just walk down, like in the town near me, there's a historical street with beautiful homes. And so, students might go walk along there and study kind of the architecture. And so it's taking your surroundings and learning from those surroundings. Whatever it is, kind of you go out with a goal, there's a specific purpose, whether you're learning history or science
Yeah.
or whatever it might be.
Oh, that's really cool. That's really interesting. Um, I loved architecture, and you talk about Logan, right? The historian.
Yeah.
Yeah. We love Logan. We visited quite a bit, and yeah. We were actually sledding there last year. I don't remember what it's called, but this huge bowl that we went to, and anyway, it was iced over and crazy dangerous, but we had a lot of fun. So we love Logan.
Yeah.
So when was the last time you taught? I mean, did you like quit your job to do this, or was that maybe years ago?
No, so I quit my job so that it was when I had my baby, so that I
Okay.
could be home with her. But I kind of like quit my job and immediately rolled this out because I wanted something that she could be a part of, and something that not just that she could be a part of, but something that I was really passionate about.
Yeah.
Um, and that I really just wanted to create something that I knew would be beneficial for the community. So So in addition to being a public educator, I've also homeschooled my own children. And so the homeschool community kind of has a special place in my heart. And even as an educator, the charter school I worked with supported home education.
Okay.
And so for me, it was also just knowing that, we have such an awesome homeschool community here in Cache Valley and wanting to kind of fill some of the gaps because, we've got some great programs going, but I haven't seen anything that was geared towards the outdoor portion of things.
Yeah. So so you wouldn't say that you would compete with those going to public school, that mostly it's kind of homeschool supplementing homeschool?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, my program is specifically for the homeschool community. I've kind of played with the idea of like what potentially it could look like the
Yeah.
big dream down the road, right?
Yeah.
And perhaps down the road it could be something that could be more of a full-time thing. But at this time, we're focused on just kind of a supplemental
Sure.
science outdoor education for homeschoolers.
What are some barriers to that that bigger model, that big dream?
To the big model, so the big model, I would say, funding is always a barrier. But also just, if we look at funding and we say, okay, well, where are we going to get funding? Well, if we get any kind of state funding, then now we are literally told what we have to teach and how we're supposed to teach it. And so that becomes a bit of a challenge.
And that'd be
Um,
technically a charter school, right?
Excuse me?
Is that at that point you're technically a charter school?
Yeah, at that point it would be like a charter school. And there's some incredible charter models, but they are still regulated by the state in order to get funding. So I think regulations and funding would be the biggest hurdles.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Um, uh, I mean, we touched on like project and place-based, education. Do you have any other like core principles or philosophies that you, I don't know, incorporate or that's really throughout your program?
I would say that the place-based and the project-based education is the primary model. Within that place-based learning, we do field studies. So, whether that's testing soils or testing waters, it's kind of like, mimicking what they would do maybe if they were a biologist, that type of a
Yeah.
thing. But I guess I would say, in addition to that, we're just a very student or child-led program. I think it's just really important to be able to kind of go with the flow of what the children are interested in and kind of where their natural curiosities go.
How big would a classroom be?
In the forest school?
Yeah, yeah, for you guys.
Okay. Yeah, you threw me off because you said classroom. I guess the forest is my classroom.
That's
Um,
right.
so, it really is going to depend on age. Right now, we have our classes capped at 15. I know, like, if you're working with younger children, you probably want less in
Yeah.
the class or more adults. We have a younger group, and we've got a main teacher and then 2 additional people helping her as well. So,
Cool.
so 3 people with 15 younger children.
Yeah. So I wanted to get to how can you be so like student led with a group like that? Because I'm thinking, student led, all right, we've got, a whole bunch of opinions on what they want to do. So how does that work?
It's tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky. And I mean, and that's whether you're doing it in the forest or doing it
Oh
in,
yeah.
a brick and mortar classroom. That's kind of the challenge of being an educator or being a mentor, is you're trying to, accommodate so many different personalities and so many different, they're coming from different places. We have some of these kids come in and they're super comfortable outdoors. And then some of them, you can tell this is like their first experience with the outdoors. So I think it really, I think that's where, one of the things we do is we make sure that the children have unstructured time. And so in this unstructured time, they can climb trees and, look at bugs or catch frogs or whatever it may be. And I think it's in those unstructured times where I've had the most connection with my
Sure.
students, where I'm able to kind of spend some time one-on-one or maybe just with a couple students and kind of get to know them and find out what their personal interests are and do my best to mentor them in that moment. And I always say, if I don't know, then I'll point you in the right direction or find somebody that can help you.
Yeah. So take us in like a day in the life. I mean, from start to finish, what does a day typically look like?
Yeah, so it can obviously vary a little bit from day to day, but we typically I get there early, obviously. Students get there, parents sign the kids in. We typically at that point we split off. I've got three age groups right now. So we've got our 5 to 7 year olds, 8 to 11, and then 12 and up. So
Wow.
I'm currently working with the teenage group right now. So we'll split into our different groups. And so once I get in with my group, then we usually just take some time just to circle up. And I kind of like to take a minute just to do kind of a little bit of mindfulness and just connect with just with the nature around us, the things we can hear and see, or maybe even smell. Just a chance to kind of center yourself.
Yeah.
After that, we typically will just move into different activities. We'll do things, everything from fun games. I mean, crazy fun running around, having all kinds of craziness going on, to more quiet, sitting and writing in our journals or having a quiet time. And then we'll have some kind of lesson. But it's very much different than a lesson that you would see in a classroom, where it really is. Our lesson might be that we're hiking up the mountain as we're having the lesson and stopping along the way. I always remember our very, very, very first class we ever had. We found this massive spider, like this big, and it was the coolest thing. And that's what's so exciting about like being out in the wilderness or the forest, is that it is our classroom. And so we get to see, there's so many like unplanned things that are happening, these wonderful spiders, and these big frogs that we're finding, and those offer so many learning opportunities. So I kind of go out there with a vision of what I'm wanting to teach for the day, but I also allow kind of the organic flow of following what are we finding, where are our interests going throughout the day. And then every day the kids always have a free time. I like to just call it wander, where they can go and explore in their own way, whatever kind of appeals to them. And at the end of the day, we always gather together and circle up and just kind of give thanks for whatever it was that day that kind of stood out to us as kind of that special moment.
So does that actually look kind of like a gratitude circle? Like, hey, let's go around
Mm-hmm.
and share the gratitude, that kind of thing?
Yeah, we call it our Thanksgiving.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
When parents say, hey, I'm gonna sign my kid up for your school, gonna pay you some money, what are those expectations that you give parents in return?
What do I,
Yeah,
sorry,
like
I'm trying to understand.
no, when parents are signing up for your school, what's the expectation that you say that your kid is gonna get out of this program?
Okay, kind of like, what am I promising to them?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So I do tell them that, I think, like, number one, it's just an experience to be outdoors, learning about nature, in nature, and an opportunity to connect. We have qualified mentors who are, very knowledgeable. I do part of my program, and this sometimes maybe sets me apart from some forest schools, is I do have a science component. Maybe that's my teacher background, but I do kind of like pulling in those academics, and so we do cover some science standards. Like I said, it's kind of much more looser than maybe you'd see in a traditional classroom. But parents come to me kind of with the expectation that we're going to cover, outdoor science.
Okay. So from a homeschool parent point of view, and this is something that, me and my wife, like, we've got three kids, my oldest is 8, and this is what's kind of set off this whole project, is learning about this. Um, from a homeschool parent's point of view, are there requirements or check boxes that these homeschool parents want you to fill to kind of, uh, I guess, are there things that homeschool parents have to do in order for their kids to get to high school or to college, and that you're kind of checking off some of those boxes, or is it pretty loose with homeschool to get
Um,
into college or things like that?
So you'll find a little bit of everything. There's nothing like state mandated that
Right.
says, you have to do X, Y, and Z to go to the next grade or to go to college. So there's nothing, there's nothing like that in regards to homeschool. Some of our families are signed up with programs that provide them with funding. And so therefore those particular programs can sometimes say, we need you to do certain things in order to receive funding from us.
Okay.
But I would say that the families that come to me, they're very excited for their kids. I would say most homeschooling families are very excited for their kids to kind of have that student-led approach to education. And so, while parents are hoping that their kids are going to come and they're going to learn something, they're very open to the idea that this is going to be kind of more flexible and student-led.
Yeah. I'd imagine parents are probably just kind of pumped that their kids are going to be spending so much time outside. You
Yeah.
get that? I'll bet. Can you speak to that a little bit? I feel like it's become much more popular, and maybe that's just kind of my own echo chamber online, but the scientific benefits of being outside. I mean, do you get into that science at all or really advertise with that at all?
I mean, I've studied it myself. I haven't used it at this point.
Sure.
As far as advertising, I mean, as far as, personally, I can see how I feel when I'm outside. And I think that was, when I was talking about like my childhood of wanting to be outdoors,
Yeah.
there's just this calming that just came over me being outdoors. I mean, I grew up in a suburban neighborhood, but I mean, if there was any little stitch of wilderness, you could, I mean, I'm using that word loosely, but you could find me there. I mean, I would lay in the concrete gutters while the water trickled past me because I didn't have a spring, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but so I mean, so just personally, I mean, I can feel just the calm that I have with that. But I mean, if you want to get like scientific, I mean, there's so many studies that just talk about, the benefits of being outdoors. It's reducing ADHD, it's reducing depression, anxiety. I mean, I don't know the numbers, the
Sure.
statistics, but I mean, there's so many studies out there, just the benefits of that. I mean, we can say with physical health, but I'm also just talking about like mental and emotional health.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Are your classes, are they I guess how are your weeks structured? Do you have the same group of kids coming, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or how's that all that set up?
Yeah, so right now our kids are only coming one afternoon a week.
Okay.
So we just meet on Friday afternoons. Same kids are coming every time. I think that's one of the key components with Forest School. It's kind of like that you want to provide them that long-term exposure. I mean, we could always take our child to a day camp, right? Where they can go for a day camp, and those are great, and that's a great opportunity. But it's one of the things about Forest School is that it's long-term, and so you really benefit from over a period of a school year or even more, learning how is this environment changing through the seasons, and how is this child growing and learning through the seasons.
So when you say long-term exposure, it's actually seeing like the landscape changing and those types of things.
Mhm.
I see. Okay. So how do you deal with, I mean, like last Friday, I don't remember the temperatures last Friday, but I'm sure it was cold. How are you guys dealing with winter and gearing up for the different elements and stuff like that?
Yeah, so last Friday we had a group of children in the morning and a group of kids in the afternoon. So the kids were there for 3 hours. I was there for like 7. It was snowing pretty good. So we were covered in snow.
Yeah.
But tomorrow we're supposed to be quite cold. We've actually been talking about that this evening, kind of how to proceed. It's kind of, this fine line of, they oftentimes in Forest Schools, you'll hear there's no bad weather, only bad clothing choices.
Yeah.
We hear that all the time. And so one of the biggest things is making sure that parents understand, their kids have to be dressed appropriately for the weather. And making sure that they come prepared. Now, there are times where we would have to cancel.
Sure.
If there's lightning storms, I personally we operate 100% outdoors. I don't have any kind of a building. So if we have lightning or the wind is so severe that, branches are falling, those are situations that we do have to cancel. Tomorrow we're expected to be about 11 degrees and we're supposed to have lots and lots of snow. So tomorrow we've made the decision to just shorten our classes to 2 hours, simply for the fact that some of our kids are not quite accustomed to being outdoors for long
Yeah.
periods of time. So it kind of gives them an opportunity. to kind of experience it without, being there for so long that hopefully it's not uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And when I read that you guys were 100% outdoors and in Utah, I just how are they doing this? Because there's definitely a lot of challenge. I think we've been pretty lucky so far. At least here in Utah County, it really hasn't gotten too cold until the last couple of weeks, but
Yeah, I think we get a little colder in Cache Valley.
definitely that's
But
definitely
yeah,
true.
we're doing okay so far. So far we haven't canceled. We've just kind of, tomorrow will be our first day that we're going to reduce our hours.
Yeah. Okay. What about this whole picture, what you're doing? What are you really passionate about?
What am I really passionate about?
Yeah.
Um, well, so for me, I am really passionate about reaching children that perhaps maybe don't thrive in a traditional environment. Um, whether we're talking about neurodiversity or just different personalities. For me, it really, as a mentor, it's so important to me that I'm creating these connections with students. I want every student that comes to us to feel super special. And I want them to know that this is a place, that they can be themselves and express themselves and be cared about for who they are as individuals.
Sure.
And I think far too many times in education, we see so many kids that are outside of the box and they don't fit in the traditional educational model and they feel like they're failing, and you'll sometimes, I don't know if you've ever seen that cartoon of, like the fish trying to climb the tree. And it's like they feel like they're failing, but it's
Yeah.
because they're not in the right environment. So for me, it really is just like reaching. I mean, I want to reach all children, but particularly the children that are feeling maybe marginalized, for them to feel like they have a really welcoming space.
What, if any, what kids is this program just not for?
I don't know. I would say it's for everyone.
Yeah, and I would agree, but I guess just with your experience. Okay.
I would say, so, I mean, in seriousness, though, I mean, in order for a student to attend our program, I think it really kind of falls more on the parents,
Yeah.
are you willing to get the clothing that your kids need to be outdoors? Are you willing to make sure they're dressed appropriately? Sometimes it is slightly inconvenient to have to drive, to our locations.
Sure.
We try to make them as convenient as possible, but there are some like logistical factors with forest schools that you do have to consider when you sign your kids up.
Yeah.
But as far as like the students, I mean I would say that forest school can benefit all kids. I think you naturally have kids that are, gravitate to it more than others. But I mean, I've had kids show up, that are so quiet and so shy, and they've hardly spent any time outside. And to just watch them just like light up, when they see something like, whether it's just an insect or something that just seems so unusual to them, something they're not used to. I mean, those moments are really special.
Yeah. So are it seemed like you guys maybe go different places. Like, do you just meet at different trailheads, or like how does that, or is it kind of one place every time?
Yeah, so being a new program, I mean, the dream would be that one day I maybe own my own ground that I can
Yeah.
operate this program on. But at this time, we are just operating on public ground or on private ground with permission.
Sure.
And so, yeah, we kind of are bouncing. We try to have at least 6 weeks in one area, just kind of so we can kind of become comfortable and get to know that area as much as possible. But yeah, right now we're just operating, wherever we're allowed.
Sure. No, that makes sense. What are some of the biggest parental concerns that you've kind of come up against?
Sorry, parental concerns?
Yeah, yeah. What are parents most concerned about when they're sending their kids to you?
Yeah, so I surprisingly haven't had a ton of parental
Good.
concern. Parents have been super supportive. I will say the question I get asked the most is about the weather. Like, what do
Yeah.
we do if it rains? Are you canceling? I'm like, no, put a raincoat on, you know? So I will say the weather is the thing that parents ask me the most about.
Yeah.
Sometimes parents will want to know, like, how are we gauging that kids are learning? When we have kind of a traditional culture of, you fill in a worksheet and you take a test, how do we know our kids are learning? And that is kind of why I really love kind of the project-based and place-based education is we still get to do field journals, but they're more authentic than like sitting down and doing a worksheet. But in addition to that, I'm like, go home and talk to your kids, ask them these questions.
The
And
drive
I think
home.
parents get really, they get really excited when they hear their kids are like starting to talk about these things that they're like, wow, they are
Yeah.
learning.
How do you as an educator know that, okay, we are making progress? I mean, like you just said, you guys aren't sitting down taking tests. So how do you judge that success, the academic success?
Yeah, so well, I will say, so just to preface this, I will say that although we do have an academic component, it's not my number one priority.
Hmm.
Um, my number one priority is to get the kids outside, connected with nature and just with the world around them. So that is my number one priority. Academics is a wonderful addition to that, but it's not like my top priority
Right.
in our program, although it is still in the program. But as far as it comes to like how am I gauging student retention or learning, a lot of that is just coming back through discussions with the kids. Just being able to say, hey, do you guys remember when we talked about this? And then they can kind of recite back to me. And so being able to hear them verbalize or be able to do, whether like some of the things we're doing might be learning about science topics, but some of the things might be shelter building or fire making and so to be able to like then witness the kids creating or doing kind of the things that they've been taught. And
Yeah.
then we adapt, if I'm seeing any holes or anything that's doesn't look like it's been understood, then I typically try to think, hey, how can I teach this in a different way because the first way didn't grasp.
Right. I, if do you mind if I ask you why you made the choice to homeschool instead of
Yeah,
sending them
yeah,
to
that's
public
fine.
school?
So I made the choice to homeschool primarily because my own children tend to learn outside of the box. I told you those were the kids that were important to me. It's because it's my
Yeah.
kids. And so my kids are, they're not the kids that they're not going to go to school, sit still, and fill out your worksheets and be quiet.
Yeah.
I'm an out of the box thinker. My husband is an out of the box thinker, and therefore we have out of the box kids. And so I just knew that they needed a different form of education.
Sure.
And so I really wanted to provide them a very like kinesthetic education with hands-on opportunities and opportunities to move and to wiggle and to talk and to kind of hone in on their special skills.
Yeah. Um, Bigger picture, uh, do you feel like a nature or forest school um, could I mean, obviously a lot of work would have to be done, but could replace public school type settings? Do you feel like it could be done on a large scale?
I think it would need a lot of support. Like there would need to be like education to the adults. Like the adults would need to understand the benefits and would need to understand, the purpose. Um, and there would need to be, a big backing, so
Yeah.
to speak, that would be willing to kind of go out and explain the benefits of this type of a program. I do think it could happen. I have heard of programs like around the country that do operate as forest schools, and they're functioning as like a charter school.
Sure.
Um, so I do know that they are happening. They are far and few in between. I do think it could happen. It's still like, I'm also, like I said, I'm also a public educator. And so I think like, how exactly would I cover math? How exactly am I going to
Yeah.
teach an essay? I mean, there would be some logistics to figure out, but I do think it could happen.
Do you think that'd be a positive thing?
Yeah, I think it would
Yeah.
be great.
Okay. Before I get to my last question, which is my favorite one, is there anything else that you want to cover or want to throw out there?
Um, I don't think so. No, I think it's been pretty thorough.
Okay. So there is a question that I ask everybody that I really enjoy. Um, and it doesn't have to be on any of the topics we've talked about so far. This is just kind of speaking from your heart. So if you had one concise message that could be broadcasted directly to every individual in the world, what would that message be?
Um, So not forest school related at all, but I
Doesn't
would
have to
say
be.
be kind. Like that I think is the ultimate thing, is be kind.
Yeah.
Show love to those around us, be kind to the creatures, be kind to our earth. I mean, just be kind. I think if we were all kind, we'd have a much happier place on earth.
Yeah. Are there boundaries like that, with your kids as you're walking through, up the trail of, let's respect nature? I mean, what kind of communication or boundaries do you have with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, one of the things I feel so blessed is the kids I'm working with, they are just very, very good, respectful kids. Um, so I haven't had like any major like behavioral
Yeah.
issues or anything like that. But one of the things, like I said, I didn't grow up in the outdoors, but my mother was a master herbalist, and she was a vegan and a master herbalist. And so she kind of raised me with this mentality of just understanding kind of the spiritual side of the earth,
Yeah.
understanding, that if we take care of the earth, she'll take care of us. And, understanding that plants can heal, and bless us. And she always taught me to take good care of the creatures. She literally carried a black widow up a mountainside because she didn't want to kill it. And so she carried it up a mountainside and released it. I mean,
Oh,
that was kind of the heart that she had. And
yeah.
so definitely when I'm with my students, we talk a lot about, we always hear like leave no trace, and that's one thing we talk about, but also just, the kind of that sacred connection that we have with the earth, and just, taking care of her so that then in turn she'll take care of us.
Yeah, that being an herbalist, that's definitely a lost art, and it's sad how quickly it's disappearing.
Yeah.
We always kind of tease my mom that she's a witch doctor, and she didn't even do it a lot, but she had a lot of things like that. I had a something going on with the middle of my foot, just a lot of pain and swelling, and so she put a poultice on there for
Mhm.
about a month every night. Just, do you know what a poultice is?
Yes.
It's just like
Very, very familiar. I
mud and bark, and I don't know what was in it, and she'd wrap it up. Well, anyways, after about a month of doing that, something came to the surface, and then she'd ice it and dig at it and ice it and dig at it, and then pulls out this piece of glass
Oh,
that had
wow.
been in there. It'd been bothering me for about 6 to 8 months at that point. But anyways, she just we still tease her about all that crazy stuff, and
Yeah,
um
it is remarkable though. I mean, and I think that is, where a lot of like my love of nature really came from my mom teaching me about the plants. And so I didn't grow up camping, I didn't grow up fishing, I didn't, grow up hiking, but I did grow up learning about the plants and just
yeah.
learning about kind of that more the health side of it, I guess.
From which country did you immigrate?
From England.
From England.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I would love my wife. She didn't grow up with any kind of, witch doctor in the family, but she's like recently, last 4 or 5 years, just really gotten into this stuff and just really digging into it. And I think it's amazing. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I don't think I had antibiotics until I was an adult.
Oh,
I think
really?
it was the first time I'd ever had an antibiotic. And I mean, if I was sick as a child, it was garlic. That was the go-to antibiotic.
Yeah. Well, and that we're like our family's just trying to reverse that, get more into that stuff. Up in our fridge right now, we have fermenting garlic and honey. Like that's what we've been
Yeah,
using the last year for, and that
yeah,
we've never done anything like that before. And so, anyways, but okay, Christina, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, we wish you luck with the rest of the year, and that's pretty great that it's your first year, and it'll be great.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, we'll see you.
Bye.